Hello everyone and welcome to our new video on supply chain levels for software artifacts, that is SLSA. So this video is especially important for the people who are working into the software development, and this basically helps them to implement a security framework for their software so that they don't face the supply chain problems which comes from the security issues. So SLSA has been a framework which has been introduced by the Google, and now it is being independently managed. This SLSA allows you to have the security built into your software. So, and there have been different levels in which the SLSA has been divided into. Prominently, 4 levels are there. Now, the major softwares which the organization are developing, including the Kubernetes, they are following the SLSA security framework. And based on the guidelines, based on the details that the SLSA has provided, you can categorize your software into one of the levels. And this also helps the DevOps members to identify and inherently creating the infrastructure, the CI/CD, creating the build and release, and maintaining the security within the process so that overall the software which gets developed is inherently secure and you don't have to face the supply chain problems when the scalability comes into the picture later. So let's get started on SLSA. This is going to be a multiple series in which we are going to cover the videos into a multiple series. So this is the part 1 where we are going to answer what is SLSA and what is the supply chain problems, and then we are going to discuss about these supply chain problems. So this is the agenda for this video. So let's get started. So we are very first thing we are going to answer what is SLSA. So if you look at the SLSA, it's basically supply chain level for software artifacts that we have already discussed. So if you have to remember this SLSA keyword, you can remember the salsa in which the A you can remove, so it becomes SLSA. So this is just a way to remember the security framework. Now, what is this security framework? Because there are multiple security frameworks, so why it becomes so important for the software perspective? Because if you look at the security framework, it has basically a checklist of the standards and controls which can help you prevent the tampering with your software. That is, the software which you are sending to your clients, which they are using, it is not tampered while the delivering of this software. The second thing is it's going to improve your integrity. So as a components, the dependencies and everything that we are going to be using, it will inherently increase the integrity of our and improve the integrity of our application. And the third thing is that it will help you to have the secure packages. Now, packages basically creates the most important part within the application delivery, because we are using the centralized repositories for downloading the dependencies, and if those packages are having the vulnerabilities on the CVEs associated with them, because our software is actually using those packages as a dependency, then same CVEs and the vulnerabilities will be coming down into your software as well. So you need to have a checkpoint for that as well, which the SLSA covers, that we are going to discuss later. And last thing is it can help you improve your infrastructure and the build and the deploy practices, which is again required to have the integrity into your overall build. And this becomes especially important for the businesses nowadays, because all the businesses relies on their applications and to reach to their clients. So having the security built into the software itself will help you prevent the large number of attacks. These attacks we are going to categorize and we are going to see in shortly, and we are going to discuss like the various stages of the software delivery. Within each of the stages there are multiple places where the software vulnerabilities and the security issues can crop in, right? So it helps the businesses and enterprises to be more resilient, and it helps them to remain safe from the linked to the supply chain level problems. So what is the supply chain problem? the next question comes this. So any software which any software can introduce the vulnerabilities into a supply chain. And as a system gets more complex, it's critical to already have the checks and the best practices in places to guarantee the artifact integrity. And that the source code which you relying on is actually the one that you are actually running. So this basically brings us to the fact that all the artifacts that we are using through our build tool, or the final artifacts that we are generating in the form of the binary files that we are executing and deploying and sharing with our clients, should be inherently secure. And basically the source code should be deployed in such a way that you are fully uh, uh, sure that the source code which you have actually created, which has been tested and which has gone through the multiple process, is the one which is actually being run, and there is no tampering or changing or changes in the source code which you might not be aware of. So these all things are covered under the SLSA. They are going to describe the various kind of security issues that you can have at the multiple stages and how you can address them. And this is going to define your level of maturity in handling the issues, and they are going to categorize the software on the basis of these levels, the ones that your software is currently having, to make it more resilient towards the security issues. Now, without the solid foundations and a plan for the system as it grows, it becomes difficult to focus on the efforts against the tomorrow next hack, breach, and compromises. This is true for all the organizations. So the ones which are just starting and creating their new products on the APIs that they will be sharing with the other businesses, then it becomes critical, because as the business grows, the system becomes more complex, more number of microservices gets involved, and because there is a rampant growth, the security plays a second place, right? So if you are following this SLSA framework, then it will be inherently built into your processes, which is going to protect your software from the vulnerabilities. Now, these vulnerabilities can be proved to be very expensive. If there is some kind of a leak in your client data or some transaction based data, then it becomes very big issue for the organizations, because then these kind of information can be made public, and this will lose the confidence of the clients into the businesses, and eventually the businesses lose their worth because of this, and a large client base will move out. And so it becomes essential that SLSA is being followed by developing the software. So let's discuss about the various vulnerabilities and see at what level they can be introduced into the supply chain. So if you see, basically there are multiple stages for any software delivery. So there are developers who are checking in their source code. So you can see that if a developer themselves submit a bad code, right? So that can be one of the issues. Now, this is something which can happen, and due to the various malicious factor, and then when you are able to determine that a piece of software is bad, at that time your version of the application might have been delivered to a very large number of people already, and they might not have upgraded. So it becomes a very big issue. At the time you have determined that the bad code was inserted into your software, then at that time the employee might already have left, so you are left with very less number of choices of what you can do and how you are going to build it. The problem becomes more critical when the further code depends upon that piece of code itself. So it becomes important that this vulnerability and the threat to your application should be handled with the proper process in place. Next is, if you look at your source control repositories, there is a compromised source control threat that your eventually, like the repository which you are using, it itself is compromised, because itself is now the source control itself is compromised. So if anyone is injecting the piece of code, then it becomes harder to track over there. So that is the next set of vulnerability. Now, after the source code, then it is being downloaded by the some build server, like your CI/CD server, such as Jenkins, GitLab, right? So basically, then they start the build, right? So this is how basically the build happens. Now, in between the source code and the build, there is a chance that the code gets modified till it reaches from the source code to the build server, right? And in that part, if the source code is getting modified, then the build server will be using the source code which has been downloaded on the CI server, right? So it will be building that only. So if a vulnerability crops into that, the build that will finally come out will be having the vulnerability in the build itself, right? Then if we look at the build itself, it can be a compromised build platform. So then comes your these builds. Basically, when they run, they create the packages. Now between the builds and the packages, it might bypass the CI/CD, okay, process, and the packages might be compromised. So you can have a package repo such as some artifactory which is storing your packages. It might be compromised itself. Then the consumer is using a risky package, that becomes another vulnerability. So and finally, this is not only limited to your system where the vulnerabilities can be cropping in, because all these follow the zero trust level, right? So each process that you are seeing, none of these, you can say, the stages is truly uh, uh, trustworthy, and there is like the zero trust level between all of them. And this is important to create the security in this, and this is what SLSA deals with, that how you can secure all these stages. And lastly, not only your environment, then there are packages which you are downloading from the centralized repositories, and we have the special build tools which where we are downloading these dependencies. So these dependencies which are getting downloaded, they might already have the security issues built into them. And because now you are using the packages which was downloaded from some other third source, and they were maintained over there, if they can have the built-in vulnerabilities into them, and which can be later exploited in your application as well. The more the size, the greater your client, the customers who are downloading the versions. And even if you release a fix to those versions at a later point in time, the chances are that a large number of people are already using the lower version of your application, which might not have those fix in place. So it becomes important that you have the SLSA in place while developing your software. And all these security issues are addressed at that point itself, because this is going to help you provide the maximum leverage towards the compromise of your software. So this is what the SLSA deals with. And all these security threats, the build threats, the dependency threats that we are seeing in this diagram, we are going to discuss their solution as well, the what processes and what practices we should be following, which will increase the trust and reduce these threats. And it will be a process, so it becomes very tough for anyone to bypass them, right? So this is where the things will be becoming more interesting. Now we are going to learn this all from a practical perspective. We are going to see the real time how we can actually prevent this from happening, and we are going to see the threats as well, with like what security tools can exploit them. There are a large number of security tools which have already been created. So it is better to have the protection at the software development level itself, right? So this is going to prevent you. Now this is important for everyone who is dealing with the software development, not only the developers themselves, because they are the prime ones who are writing the source code, but then they have a limited liability towards like what they are not getting the full privileges to maintain the build and the deployment of their packages. This is something which comes under the folks who are maintaining these systems, like the DevOps folks who are maintaining this kind of automation. And so for them, it also becomes important. Same becomes important for the product teams, because the overall product might be compromised. So you will see that everyone who is related to the software development, they becomes essential. This SLSA practices becomes essential, that you have a supply chain level for software artifacts. So these practices should be built into your software development. So that's all for this video. Myself, Ankit Mittal, signing off. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe to our channel for receiving these videos directly into your YouTube, and you will be able to know it. Now, if you are having some doubt regarding this, or you are having some thoughts, please do share in the comments. I will be getting back to you. Thank you.